The house is known as the Presbyterian Parsonage. Originally, the parsonage needed to be replaced, and so the Presbyterian Church purchased this house in 1871. And originally it stood at the head of Greenwich in Othello, where the newer parsonage was finally built in 1894. And after they decided to build the new parsonage, they sold this to Mr. Bacon, and he divided the building in half between the two sections, and he moved it down the road by about a mile, and he reconfigured it into a T shape. And because of that, people thought that it was a Victorian house. But in working on the house and doing renovations, it was discovered that the house had a heavy timber frame structure to it. And that put this dining area probably in the period of 1750. And when it was built, it was just a story and a half. And then, like a lot of houses in the area, they added a newer addition roughly in the 1790s, and that's the living room area. And then a third renovation raised this section, the dining room section, up to a full 2 stories. And then it was moved to this location around 1894, which would have been interesting to see. I guess they moved it on logs and they pulled it by horses, and then it was reconfigured. There's a number of items in the house that are regional to New Jersey. The chairs on either side of that sideboard, they're from the Cooper Chair Company up in Bergen County, and this small cupboard over here is from Newark by a Mr. Becker. That's probably around the 1890s. And the little child's chair over here is from the Gardner Company up in North Jersey. In the living room, there's a Rogers statue, and that's going to the Parsons. And then above it, there's a picture of Reverend Osborne, and he was the last minister to speak at the Old Stone Church in Fairfield. And then upstairs in the front bedroom, there are chairs that are from the Monmouth County area, from the Clayton shop in Allentown, and a number of items that were in a movie with Hilary Duff and Ellen Burstyn called According to Greta. And that's the penny coverlet on the bed, and the rocker with the shell design and the wicker table and the jardiniere above it. This is known as the bullseye house mainly because of the 4 glass bullseyes over the door. Rachel Taylor, when she married Benjamin Reeve, who was a clockmaker, whose family was from Greenwich, her grand aunt was married to Richard Worcester of the Worcester Glass Works. That was the first successful glass works in the United States. And these were probably a gift from Richard Worcester. The house is one of the 400 houses that the Historical American Building Survey surveyed between the 30s and the 40s. And there's about 28 in Cumberland County that were chosen. It was chosen mainly because of the 4 fireplaces that are in the house, and of course the front door of the house and the Georgian style of the architecture. About 100 of those 400 houses are now gone. There's only about 300 that are left. This house was built in the later half of the 18th century. In this room there are several regional items. The 2 paintings between the windows there by Warren Shepherd. He was a famous yachtsman and wrote several books on yachts, and he grew up and was part of this Shepherd family that had later owned this house for about 100 years. The sampler on the left is from Jones Island in southern Cumberland County, and the sampler on the right is from Dorchester. Both of them were probably made at the Port Elizabeth Institute, which was actually founded, one of the co-founders was Judge Brick. He and his wife are on this wall over here. And he not only was one of the founders of the Institute, but he was one of the owners of the Eagle Glass Company in Cumberland County. And these 2 vases on the desk were made at the Eagle Glass Company, along with this green paperweight. The clock was made by William Morris, and that was made in Bridgeton. And the case was made by Joshua Fithian, who worked in Bridgeton and later moved and retired to Rosetown. The small chair on the left was by the Ware family, and the small child's chair on the right was made by William McElroy, along with these 2 armchairs. A small pastel of the woman, that was done by Susan Smith of Newark, New Jersey. And the upholstered chair, the wing chair, that was owned by the Wood family and had descended in their family. He married in 1799 and commissioned several pieces of furniture, and that's possibly from that marriage. And the painting of the Navesink River is by John Inslee. The 2 chairs on either side of the cupboard are Ware chairs also. And one of the rarest of the items is the fire back that is in the fireplace, and that was from the Taunton furnace in Burlington County. It may be one of 2 items that have survived from the Taunton furnace that are documented. And the plates on the table, they're from the Arsenal pottery in Trenton, and the small leaf plate on the small table is marked by the Eureka pottery. And the Toby mugs on the mantelpiece there from Sarah Poland, who worked in North Jersey. And the left Toby is from the Matawan pottery. All the Windsor chairs in here are branded by and made by William McElroy, again from the Morristown area. The chest on chest came down in the Taylor and Bacon family, and actually the chest originally was in the house right up the street, the old Bacon house that they just painted yellow. So it originally was and probably made by one of the Bacons. One of the Bacons was an early cabinet maker. The clock is from, the tall case clock is Benjamin Cleveland from Newark, and the painting to the right of that is Dr. Fizzler of the Fizzler Glass Company. He founded Fizzler Glass. There's a variety of samplers on the wall. The one on the left is Newtown, Newton, New Jersey. The one to the right of the cabinet is from Newark. Presentation pictures on top of the cover are from the Union Pottery in Trenton, New Jersey, along with the bowl. And inside the cabinet is American pottery from that was produced by the Henderson brothers, and all these pieces are actually marked. That started pretty much in the beginning of the early American Industrial Revolution, and before Henderson's came along, all pottery was thrown on a wheel, and they had purchased the Drummond Glass Company. And I don't know if that was the inspiration, because they were using press molds to make pressed glass. That maybe it gave them the idea to start using press molds for pottery. But apparently they just impressed the mold of the main structure of the, say, the pitcher, and then these decorations were all done later on in separate molds, and then they were adhered to the pieces of pottery. So it was a tremendous amount of work. In the early 19th century, the Franklin Institute in Philadelphia was promoting industry in the United States, and the Hendersons won several awards for their pieces because of that. Again, the pottery in the cupboard on the first shelf, that's also by Claire Poland, and the pieces above are from Trenton. The Merry Christmas plate is another Eureka pottery piece, and the little Christmas card is from Governor Edge. And above the chest on chest, there are two presentation pictures, normally with frogs on them. They're from the Swan Hill pottery up in the Perth Amboy area. The pictures in this room, this is from Elizabethtown, of the gentleman, the small painting of the gentleman. That's by Frederick Leopold. I haven't been able to find anything on him, but possibly a brother or a son later on was recognized as an artist. The painting of the woman, probably one of the Pennsylvania Dutch family members in Monmouth County, was by Michael Williams. He was a New Brunswick artist, and that's in pastel. And this is Hannah Elmer, Bridgeton, New Jersey. The way that it's painted, almost like she's floating in clouds. I'm speculating that she may have died young and that the family commissioned a painting of her. And the small miniature paintings are attributed to a gentleman named Demarest. The chair below is by Samuel Roberts, Pemberton, that's branded by Seminole Roberts. The chest is branded and made by Bellevue from Trenton, and the mirror has a label from Carey and Kenny of Newark, New Jersey. The sampler over the fireplace is kind of interesting to me because it was made in Haddonfield, where I'm from, but her grandfather owned land in which I lived on when I was a child. So it's kind of like 7 degrees of separation. Mm-hmm. This is the oldest piece that I have. This was originally in a book owned by John Haddon, and Haddon had purchased all the land that Haddonfield is on, and he sent his daughter, Elizabeth Haddon, to America. He was a London merchant, and he sent his daughter, and she was the founder of Haddonfield. And it came down in the family. What is interesting is that it came down through the Crescent family. I didn't realize that they had been related to Elizabeth Haddon, which is interesting. Of course, there's Crescent, New Jersey, and Crescent Road. That's very well known in the Haddonfield area. But that's really kind of interesting for me. And the painting in poor condition is Mary Olden of Princeton, New Jersey, and all of her papers are at the Princeton Historical Society. The wall work over here is Monmouth County, just like the other two samplers. One is painted on a shell. There's a woman in the 19th century that painted it a lot on shells. And this was done of the shipwreck of the Laura Bridgman that was wrecked off of Asbury Park. And the other plaster piece is a painting of the New Era, which also wrecked off of Asbury Park. This is the drop wing of the house. Originally it was the kitchen. There was a large walk-in fireplace that stood in the corner where the linen press is. That is from the New Brunswick area, along with the chest that has the label for New Brunswick. The fractors that are on either side of the painting, they're Burlington County fractors. And the painting is by G.G. Ross of Newark, along with the small miniatures. They're also from Newark, New Jersey. The two small gray chairs, gray was known as Quaker drab. They were used in the Quaker Friends School in Haddonfield for the youth. And the hat box on the table here, that's of the Sandy Hook lighthouse up in Sandy Hook, up in Monmouth County. The chairs are all marked, the Bergen County chairs with the finials on them, they're all marked by the Demers family and the Zabriskie family. They were two major chair-making families up in Bergen County. And the two chairs on this far wall, they're by Zena's Maps. The Maps family was a dynasty of chair-making family up in Monmouth County. And the cupboard is Bergen County, and the pieces on the top shelf are Cumberland County pieces from Bridgeton. And the box here is an oyster box from Greenwich, New Jersey. And of course the mincemeats. One is Camden and one is the Crossworks. Crossworks is probably one of the most famous of the mincemeat manufactured. Sadly, it was a spectacular building. It was just torn down recently. And the presentation picture over here is from the Friends. That's also Union Pottery of Newark, New Jersey. The picture over here is of the Shark River. This is of Long Beach Island, and the painting over here, the small painting over here, is of Ullman's Creek that divides Gloucester and Salem County. What is interesting in here is the table. This came out of the Takanasi Life Saving Station, and the Life Saving Station was a program that was established partially because of the New Era wreck, which was an incredible tragedy. And the chairs that are in here are, for the most part, Bergen County chairs, again by the Zabriskie family and the Demers family. And the little high chair here is possibly by Master Ware, who was the founder of the dynasty of the Ware family. The cupboard is Bergen County and the clock is New Jersey. This is known as the Waithman house because it's the earliest family that they know had lived here, except that from a previous owner, she had implied that there had been an early deed from 1735, probably still to the Waithmans. But this is known as a heavy timber frame house, mainly because of the summer beam construction. Back in the 15th century in England, whole houses originally were just one large room, and when they decided to start making more private quarters in their houses, they put in these summer beams to add a second floor into the large space where they would have had fires in the center of the hall and the fire would have raised up. They started changing the fires from being in the center to fireplaces, and then they were adding rooms. And that's where this archaic form of architecture came from. This possibly could be the largest summer beam in the U.S. I haven't seen any that are larger. Originally, the house was probably about 4 feet wider. It would have had a large walk-in fireplace on the south end, and this beam is called a chimney girt. And the chimney was, the walk-in fireplace was actually underneath of that chimney on the right-hand side, and then there were stairs that went under the girt and up to the upper floors. But probably in the later 18th century, that part of the house was probably collapsing, and they took it down and they moved the wall forward and they built this new fireplace probably around the 1780s. The previous owner started doing work on the house, and he's the one that took all the walls down, and that's more or less when the age of the house was discovered, because the majority of what you see was covered over and people just weren't aware of how early it was. It's possible that it was built from the 1690s to the 1720s. And a gentleman who does dendrochronology, that's where they drill into the beams to test for the age of the house, he said if this summer beam was cut around the 1720s, then it meant that it started growing around 1490, the actual tree. The heavy timber frame is more or less the type of framing that was done before milling came in, and now the type of milling that they have, a standard 2x4, is what is produced, where all this was hand done before any other mills were pretty much in existence. But when the gentleman took the stairs down, it shows that originally the framing was all exposed, the siding was exposed, and they didn't have the plaster walls. This is what they actually lived with, so it must have been very cold in the house. The furniture that is of interest is, a lot of it is actually from the New Brunswick area. There was a cabinet maker, he and his father and his sons, the Edgerton family from New Brunswick. Matthew Edgerton built the corner cupboard over here, and he also built this cos. There's 3 of them that I know that are in existence. The Monmouth County Historical Society has one with Edgerton's label on it, so that's how I know that it's actually made by Edgerton. Sideboard is also from New Brunswick, and it has 3 labels in it by James Moore. And what's interesting, that I found very little furniture made by him. There was possibly because there was a tornado that went through New Brunswick in the early 19th century. The great chair is from Sussex County, but it has since been made into a rocker, which is common just from wear and tear. And the iron pieces here, the fire back is from the Oxford furnace from 1747. And of course, the Oxford furnace was very important during the Revolution. They produced a lot of the artillery material, and the British were constantly attacking it to take it over. And the small stove on the right is by Barber and Dare of Bridgeton, and the small cauldron is also by Barber and Dare. The stove is from Troy, New York. 2 chests of drawers are also New Brunswick. This is possibly by Oliver Parcell. And the sampler over the fireplace, that was made in Greenwich in 1810, but not this Greenwich. It was the Greenwich in Gloucester County. And the tall case clock was made by Silas Howe of New Brunswick. And the painting behind it is by Michael Williams, and that is part of the Brokaw family. The Brokaws were a big clockmaker family, and Tom Brokaw, the newsman, he's part of that family. And there's a series of glass pieces here, and one of the pieces here is of the Feisler. Here's one of the Feisler glasswork houses, Huffsey, and these are Bridgeton pieces, here and here. I think this is Bridgeton also. And probably the most important piece is the fireback, and that is marked with the Cumberland furnace, again from southern part of Cumberland County. the bedroom, the linen press is also by Matthew Edgerton. And then this is just a little kind of like side room. This is a wear chair here, another William McElroy chair. And the little furniture, that's about 5 generations of pieces from the family.